Thank you for participating in today's special meeting. I call this meeting to propose time-sensitive discussion that relates to the board's direction at the March meeting, which we will discuss after closed session. To start off our meeting, I will call on Directors Bartlett and Penaloza for the invocation and pledge. Director Bartlett.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Please bow your heads and join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come together today to conduct the business of our agency. We ask that you grant us wisdom and provide guidance as we deliberate on the important items before us this morning. We ask that you give this board the sound judgment to make prudent decisions for the agency, which result in good governance. We all make sacrifices in an attempt to balance our work and personal lives, but what we do pales in comparison to the service and sacrifices made by the men and women who choose to serve in the military and as first responders. We ask that you watch over these brave men and women and keep them out of harm's way. Finally, we ask that you bring peace to the many corners of the world where unrest is a part of daily life. We make these requests in your holy name. Amen.
Oh, Director Penaloza for the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, he's not here? Okay, so I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Honorable Directors. Kaylee Doolittle, Interim Clerk of the Board. I will now proceed with the roll call. Chair Wong.
I'm present.
Vice Chair Miller.
Here.
Director Bartlett.
Here.
Director Steele.
Here.
Director Chafee.
Present.
Director Chamberlain.
Here.
Director Kelly. Here. Director Khan.
Here.
Director Lombard.
Here.
Director Murphy. Director Trevor O'Neill.
Here.
Director Penaloza. Director Taylor. Director Voigt.
Here.
Director Wagner.
Here.
Director Ward.
Present.
Looping back, Director Murphy. Director Penaloza. Director Taylor. Madam Chair, noting the absence of Director Murphy, Director Penaloza, and Director Taylor, we do have quorum.
Perfect. Great. Right now, I'm going to ask our counsel to announce the closed session.
Public comments.
Oh, public comments. I skipped right over. And any public comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'd like to remind everyone during live public broadcasting, members of the public may address the joint boards of directors regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the joint boards of directors, but no action may be taken on off-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes for all comments unless the chair, subject to the approval of the boards of directors, set different time limits. Madam Chair, we have received 2 public comments.
Thank you.
I will start with the first public comment received by James Treadaway to Samuel Johnson, and I'll start now. Dear Mr. Johnson, Orange County Public Works has reviewed the staff report for agenda item number 1, file number 2021-F013 of the Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency, FETCA, Board of Directors special meeting for April 22nd, 2021. The proposed Los Patrones Parkway Extension, LPPE, is to be delivered as a non-toll county arterial roadway, and any resolutions or policies adopted by the FETCA board related to the LPPE do not bind or obligate the County of Orange. While the agency item states that the FETCA March decision also directed staff to collaborate with the County of Orange as the lead agency to advance the LTPE as a county major thoroughfare, OC Public Works managed and/or staff have not been included in any substantive decisions or discussions, regarding the development of the proposed policy. We have concerns about the factual nature of the statements made in the document, which need to be clarified and/or discussed. In the spirit of cooperation and shared interests and mobility needs for South Orange County, we request that the county be involved in any discussion related to the Los Patrones Parkway or any other county roadway. Decisions involving county-owned roadways will require the approval of the county's leadership. If you have questions or concerns about this, please feel free to contact me. Sincerely, Jim Treadway. End of public comment. Second public comment received from Michelle Schumacher, and I will begin now. Seriously, the TCA authorizes a working group to try and make things better, and this is what you come up with? I don't think that you all have been listening for the past 6 years. Do you miss the over 100,000 residents in the petitions that the letters and the public speakers opposing the 241 from extending? Peggy Wong's secret select group of committee members did not include that cities are most affected by the baloney that goes on with the agency 24/7. Really a special meeting for another closed door deal? Was it not enough that this board already voted and approved the TCA staff to engage in contracts up to $500,000 without board oversight or approval? That you now sink to this new low. While the secret group meetings that again leave out the city most impacted, not permitted to be in attendance to participate. While you all cry for local control, you actively ignore the communities affected by the TCA's mission creep and begin 360 degrees outside the TCA's scope as provided by the JPA agreement. This meeting is so off the mark, and this is nowhere near a solution. In fact, it is just another heavy-handed backdoor deal. You meet consistently, turn a bunch of fees, and do nothing that benefits taxpayers. OCTA runs the 91 freeway in 15 minutes a month. Yet here you all are again for what? Today you want only one board member to be able to throw a few more hundred thousands of dollars at more studies is unreal, given the 25 years unless studies that show the same thing. There is no more space and no need for an economically discriminating toll road. And for goodness sakes, the 241 southern portion of the toll road is so underused. Why would you spend one more red penny? Taxpayers don't support the extension, therefore, no more money should be spent studying it. 25 years of studies with no benefit and 21 years of litigation. OC taxpayers have had enough. Clearly, Nossaman, your law firm that formed the agency, litigates and lobbies for the agency, thinks you are on the right path. Many would argue between the TCA and the Concrete Association, they also lobbied for, they are collecting plenty and you should put an end to the boondoggle. Samuel Johnson, who for some reason is confused and thinks that he and TCA staff should be directing transportation policy when the TCA is not only a single purpose agency to construct the toll system. Now complete, pay down the bonds in 30 years, times up and go away. That's end of public comment.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to closed session. I'll ask the council to announce our closed session item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The closed session will be a conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation under subdivisions A and D1 of the Government Code, section 54956.9, regarding the matters entitled the Reserve Maintenance Corporation versus Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency et al. And City of San Clemente versus Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency et al. We do not anticipate reportable action.
Okay, thank you. So now we move into closed session.
We are live.
Great, thank you. I will now, we are now at public session. I will now ask our council to report out on our closed session.
Nothing to report, Madam Chair.
All right, great. I think we do begin with the public comment letters, correct?
Yeah, and I think this is
we already
more
read it.
of an item that pertains to this matter before the board, and it's been requested that it be read, so.
Correct.
For that request, I'll go ahead and start now. Letter received from OCTA to Mr. Samuel Johnson, Chief Executive Officer. Dear Mr. Johnson, thank you for providing the agenda packet for the Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency's special meeting scheduled for April 22nd, 2021. That includes the proposed project planning policy. Given the months-long collaborative process undertaken by the Transportation Corridor Agency, TCA, Orange County Transportation Authority, OCTA, and the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, to successfully resolve this matter more than a year ago, it was surprising and disappointing to receive this proposed policy 3 days prior to a special meeting of the Boards of Directors Board with no request for input or discussion from OCTA. This proposed policy purports to reaffirm the TCA commitment to decisions following the conclusion of the South County Traffic Relief Effort, SCTRE, and to provide future guidance to both TCA Board and TCA staff. However, the proposed policy and resolution were contrary to attempts to resolve concerns that led to the introduction of SB 760 Bates R. Laguna Hills and SB 761 Bates R. Laguna Hills. Resolving the concerns behind these bills would be best achieved by carrying through with the agreements made in spring 2020 and dropping any further consideration of the proposed policy and resolution. As a reminder, in spring 2020, TCA and Caltrans concluded the process of studying toll road expansion options in South Orange County through the SCTRE. Based on technical work, public input, and public direction, the TCA board voted to advance 3 projects in the development process that would address South County mobility needs. These included a non-tolled extension of Los Patrones Parkway from Cow Camp Road to Avenida La Plata, widening of Ortega Highway between Cowley and Tradero to Rada Road, and extension of the Interstate 5 carpool lane from Avenida Pico to the south, the San Diego County line area. Other future projects will be considered as part of OCTA's comprehensive South Orange County multimodal transportation study, SOCMTS. The TCA board's vote on March 12, 2020, deemed the above projects as fulfilling the intent of the SCTRE. The board vote also specifically concluded the agency's efforts to identify solutions for a southerly extension of the State Route 241 SR 241 toll road. Subsequently, Caltrans, OCTA, and TCA collectively agreed to move forward with this strategy. The proposed project planning policy resolution contemplates a future southern extension of this SR 241 toll road, and it clearly indicates that TCA is considering backing away from the actions noted above. The proposed policy also expands TCA's role to duplicate OCTA planning efforts, including the SOCMTS that is currently underway to plan for future transportation needs in South Orange County. The proposed policy suggests future consideration of improvements to Los Patrones Parkway in conjunction with a potential extension of the SR 241 toll road. This statement can be interpreted as Los Patrones Parkway being an initial phase of a future toll road, undermining efforts to construct a non-tolled roadway. OCTA has serious concerns with any TCA-led planning efforts now or in the future, and the potential direction TCA is headed is contrary to regional planning responsibilities. Any TCA-led planning efforts should be restricted to those board-approved elements mutually agreed to in spring 2020 and/or to committed widening projects on existing TCA toll roads. Anything else would be inconsistent with current transportation system plans and regional transportation planning documents. OCTA, as the County Transportation Commission, is the agency that determines if sufficient regional planning has occurred to justify adding Orange County projects to the financial constrained Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, and regional travel demand model. As such, the RTP reflects the projects and overall vision defined in OCTA's long-range transportation, LRTP. OCTA selects projects from the LRTP that have been studied and publicly vetted through system plans such as major investment studies, corridor studies, transit system studies, the master plan of arterial highways, active transportation strategic plans, and the like. These projects are then further vetted as part of the overall system vision through LRTP, public engagement opportunities. OCTA's LRTP includes multimodal projects and programs to address transportation needs in South Orange County. Project recommendations from SOMCS will be considered for inclusion in the upcoming 2022 LRTP. OCTA is committed to addressing mobility in South Orange County. This is demonstrated through investing more than $1 billion in transportation infrastructure in South Orange County within the last decade, and through plans for continued investment. Without adequate development of system and regional plans and meaningful stakeholder input, projects could emerge haphazardly and lack public support. This creates confusion about the vision for the transportation system, unnecessary redundancies of studies and construction impacts, and an overall squandering of public dollars, whether from taxes or tolls. In addition to the proposed policy being unnecessary, it is flawed. The identified triggers for calling to initiate a study are arbitrary, unclear, and inconsistent with accepting planning practice. The 10% increase in traffic is not tied to any baseline. Any threshold should also reflect the coordination and collaboration with OCTA. Finally, references to the SCTRE in the policy as the technical basis for assessing future projects overlooks the fact the subject study had several technical shortcomings and, as such, should not be perpetuated in future analysis. Furthermore, any future east-west traffic issues should be deferred to OCTA for follow-up with cities and the County of Orange. This letter is a request to follow long-standing best planning practices and state code. This approach will ensure public funds are responsibly allocated based on informed and justified decisions that are understandable and transparent to stakeholders. We urge TCA to forego any further consideration of the proposed policy and resolution as it is both unneeded and works against resolving the concerns underlying SD 760 and SD 761. Further, we recommend TCA recommit to the agreements reached following the conclusion of the SCTRE, including continuing to participate in the SOCMTS and the continuing comprehensive and cooperative planning process led by OCTA. I appreciate the work our agencies have been able to accomplish in recent years through the spirit of cooperation and look forward to continuing that effort. I realize I have raised a number of concerns here, and I'd be happy to meet with you and discuss them at your convenience. Please feel free to contact me. Sincerely, Daryl E. Johnson, end of letter.
Great. Thank you. I do see Supervisor Bartland's hand up, and I would just ask that you patiently wait until we have an opportunity to get staff's presentation, and I will call on you at that time. Before we begin, I thank you for your patience. I do want to make this comment that this brings us to the lone item on our agenda for today. As I noted at the opening, I called this meeting for the board to consider action on a proposed policy that aligns with the board's direction for Chair Kelly and I to form a working group to develop local solutions that alleviate the need for legislation from Sacramento and provide a path to dismissal of San Clemente's lawsuit. Want to thank Supervisor Bartlett for her foresight in March on bringing on this matter so that we can form this work group. So I want to thank her for that. And the former goal was somewhat time sensitive as Senate Bill 760 is slated for its first hearing on Tuesday. And we wanted to convey that we are serious about finding a local solution to encourage Senator Bates to withdraw her bill or make it a 2-year bill. We met with Senator and she graciously called me yesterday to convey to me that while she commends the work on the by the work group and the policy, the proposed policy did not sway her into delaying her bill. Therefore, I will not be calling for a vote today. I want to utilize the time for the board to provide input on the policy and direction to the working group. I believe this still has merit and demonstrates that TCA is committed to finding a local solution. This also gives the entire board more time to contemplate and work through the policy and take into account input from our partners at Caltrans and OCTA, which was always my intent as the second phase of the work group's approach. With the urgency of the legislation somewhat negated, we also have the time to include discussions about pending litigation. And I also think this would allow me to address San Clemente's desire to include Director James in the working group, so if the opportunity presents itself, we can quickly pivot to resolving the litigation, which was the third phase of this phase approach. As I reported publicly at the External Affairs Committee meeting, as well as the April's board meeting just 2 weeks ago, I believe, or last week, 2 weeks ago, time flies. And the working group has had several meetings, and I have publicly shared that we were working on a draft resolution and policy as was originally suggested at the March board meeting. This draft policy was vetted by the working group with a focus on the legislative goal. I wanted to make sure that as elected officials, we put forward transparent public policy that honor the decisions we made a year ago, ensure we work with the county, OCTA, and Caltrans, and document that TCA is not looking to push any study or project that is not warranted. As staff makes the presentation, you will hear key aspects of the policy that are intended to show our commitment to the findings from our study, which is the South County Traffic Relief Effort that produced alternate Route 22, which includes the Los Patrones Parkway extension, the winding of Ortega Highway, and the I-5 HOV lane, and the expectation that another study will not be needed, and that any contemplation of a future study shall be driven by objective data, regional collaboration, and transparency. As noted in the OCTA letter, if true, the study did have some technical shortcomings. This policy ensures that if there is any contemplation of a future study as a result of those technical flaws, then this policy, that any of these technical flaws, anyone who wants to study anything, that this policy must be met and that there is good regional collaboration on the data before any movement will take place. And I want to stress that is another reason why this policy is very important, and also continue to demonstrate our commitment to to the prior agreement. I will now turn it over to staff, and after the presentation, I would love to hear ideas on how the working group's proposed policy could be improved.
Great. Valerie? Good morning, Chair Wong and directors. I'm Valerie McFall, and I'm the Deputy CEO for the agency. If we can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So as background, as you all recall, last year in March of 2020, the board adopted the South County Traffic Relief Effort Scoping Summary and Alternative Screening Report. And as part of this recommendation, the board agreed to advance the untold Los Patrones Parkway extension for further environmental review by the County of Orange, and also directed staff to work with the County of Orange as the lead agency for that project. However, despite the board's decision last year, there continues to be misinformation that is leading to public concern. And also, as you are aware, there's been some proposed legislation over the last couple of years. And then lastly, our ongoing litigation with San Clemente still continues regardless of the board making that decision. Next slide, please. Last month in March, the board directed the chairs to establish a Foothill Eastern South working group. And the goal of the working group was to resolve the concerns that led to Senator Bates' introduction of SB 760 and 761, and resolve the ongoing litigation with San Clemente. The working group was inclusive in the initial phase of the Foothill Eastern member cities of Mission Viejo, Rancho Santa Margarita, San Clemente, San Juan Capistrano, and the County of Orange Supervisor Bartlett's office. Unfortunately, San Clemente was unable to attend the initial round of meetings. The working group did meet 4 times over the condensed time frame of the last few weeks. And the working group really focused on hearing all the concerns that have been stated recently by San Clemente as well as Senator Bates. And the working group agreed that they wanted to have any policy that was centered around good transportation planning. Next slide, please. So the working group developed the project planning policy. And again, it reaffirms the board's decision from last year and the data that was used to get to the recommendations that the board approved in March. The goal of the policy is to provide clear guidance to the board, future boards, and also direction to staff, and also to provide reassurance to the public of any steps the agency would need to undertake and complete prior to even considering the initiation of a study. The policy clearly lays out the steps as well as any metrics the agency would need to satisfy prior to looking at the initiation of a study. And all of these would not occur until after completion of the Los Patrones Parkway extension. Currently, that project is slated to be complete in 2028. And then post-opening, it would take a few years to have the traffic resolved around that. So this policy would not go into effect for many years into the future. Importantly, I want to make sure that the board understands and the public that this policy does not infer that the Foothill Eastern Agency is undertaking any regional planning. That is an OCTA's role, and they conduct that through the Long-Range Transportation Plan. Finally, the policy provides that we must use objective data in order to consider that any study would be initiated, and again, many years into the future. Next slide, please. Again, this assumes completion of Los Patrones. So before any study is even considered, we've identified 3 triggers that would have to occur, at which time we would then look at the metrics. So the triggers that include a Foothill Eastern board member comes to the agency and says they have concerns related to traffic on Los Patrones and its impact on one of their east-west arterials, and ask the agency to look at the impacts from those volumes, those facilities. The other trigger could be that the county, as the owner-operator of Los Patrones, has a volume that goes over what was anticipated in the design and completion of their Los Patrones project. So if they design it as a 4-lane facility and they're starting to see volumes that exceed what was anticipated, that could be a trigger for them to look at TCA to look at whether or not a study was recommended. Finally, we would use the sub-regional forecast data used by OCTA through their travel demand model, and is put together by the Center for Demographic Research that identifies any constraints in South County as a result to changes in demographics, whether it be population, jobs, or housing. From these metrics, we now will move on to the triggers. So next slide. So once one of those 3 items occur, the agency would then look at whether or not they meet the triggers. The triggers have been identified as like a threshold or a benchmark of 10%. So if traffic exceeds what was projected in the South County March 2020 beyond 10%, then that could be a reason to substantiate a need to look at a study. The other metric would be if those east-west major thoroughfares within the Federal Eastern Member jurisdictions have a degradation of more than 10% to the existing conditions, that could also warrant a consideration of a study. The final 10% trigger is whether there's a change in the demographics in that portion of the county along the 241 of Los Patrones and are requesting TCA fund or initiate a study. They would also have to satisfy that 10% change in order for TCA to consider it. Next slide. So the 10% was used as a benchmark because it really identifies whether or not a change is substantial. It is simple to measure as a first screen. It doesn't give you the exact data. Obviously, a study would determine that, but at least provides enough of a test to say something's going on in this area, we need to look at it. It would also allow us to easily compare against the South County documents that were approved by the boards last year to see if what is happening in 10 years is it consistent with what the board adopted last year, or if it is showing different results from what was forecasted. And a 10% change really identifies traffic that exceeds fluctuations such as summer vacations or holiday trips. It really kind of rises above those infrequent increases of daily traffic. And finally, 10% roughly corresponds to a change in level of service that I know all the cities use to look at how their city arterials are performing. And so that's why we identified a 10% as the threshold for the metrics. Next slide, please. So the policy lays out that once those metrics are evaluated, we would work with the county, OCTA, and Caltrans and ask they look at and validate the applicability of the metrics that we have been alerted to. And we would also work with them to obtain letters of concurrence that they agree with what we are seeing on our end as far as the board members' request or Los Patrones exceeding the design volumes, or again, the change in demographics. And we work with them to obtain letters of concurrence. Next slide. So once we obtain the letters of concurrence, we would then package up all the information. We would package up the request and document the triggers, whether they were satisfied. We would also demonstrate the metrics and show whether or not there was enough of a change to have the board consider a study. And then we'd also put in the package the response from our partner agencies. And then we would also include any public input received throughout the process. We would then present this information to one of our standing committees, again, to provide input from the public and also stakeholders. So we want to make sure that this is a very transparent and open process. Once the committee considered the item, they would then either direct staff to move it forward to the Full Eastern Board to consider the item, or they would direct staff to go back and consider other factors. But regardless, this would be done in a public forum and again with input from the public and stakeholders. Next slide, please. So once we get through the metrics and package up the materials, we would work to coordinate with our agencies as part of any request for the study. We would also have to comply with all state and federal environmental and regulatory requirements. As you're all very familiar, the environmental process is very prescriptive and requires public input throughout the entire process, from the initial scoping through any draft environmental documents, and even when the document goes to a final stage, public input is sought and considered. Additionally, if any regulatory coordination was required, those are done in open formats through public hearings and meetings, so the public would have an option to weigh in during those points as well. And finally, we would attain all public input and stakeholder input throughout every step that's identified in the policy. So we try to craft the policy to demonstrate that is a very open and transparent process with lots of checkpoints throughout the way, where we obtain input from our partner agencies as well as the public. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, did I skip one? Yes, okay. So in conclusion, the policy was drafted really to provide a clear and transparent process for the board, the public, and staff about any future study, and again, post-construction of Los Patrones. The policy is intended to reaffirm the board's decision from last year and also provide safeguards and assurances to the public on the metrics TCA would use, and requires that if there's any material changes in traffic performance or any planning data, that only then would TCA consider whether or not it would undertake a study. It also directs us to seek concurrence from the county, OCTA, and Caltrans to look at the metrics and whether there's a need for a study. Next slide, please. And only when the board considers whether or not it should authorize a study, we would need to receive approval from the County of Orange as the owner of Los Patrones, and also OCTA through their long-range transportation plan, and then SCAG through their regional transportation plan. I want to underscore the fact that, again, TCA is not inferring that we're going to do any regional planning or any projects outside of the 241 toll road. Los Patrones was highlighted in the policy because it has a direct intersection and nexus to the 241 toll road. Beyond those points, we're not suggesting that we would undertake any study or projects. That's in the hands of OCTA, Caltrans for any highways in partnership with OCTA, and then also the cities would work with OCTA. This is limited to the toll road, and then again, the direct nexus to the Los Patrones. So should the study identify that there's a need for a Foothill Eastern study or project, the board would consider all the information that it is provided, as well as the financial viability of whether or not a study or project is warranted. Final slide, please. Next one. So at this time, I will turn it back to our CEO and Chair Wong. I just want to provide a highlight of what the policy was intended, and then I'll turn it over for discussion to the Chair and CEO.
I think Samuel wanted to make a brief comment.
Sure, Madam Chair, thank you. So as Ms. McFall highlighted, you know, there's a lot of thought and detail that goes into this policy. So I just wanted to reiterate a few points really quickly, that the structure of the policy is really best viewed as a series of gates, which are intended to ensure the continued commitment to the board's decision last year. First, we have the triggers that she talked about, and these ensure that even prior to any consideration, that staff is not self-initiating any process. The triggers point to concerns raised by board members, the county, or OCTA. Secondly, the metrics evaluation which Ms. McFall covered, are based or only looked at if one of the triggers occur. And those metric evaluation and that process requires staff to take a high-level review of the data and work with the county, OCTA, and Caltrans to ensure we're all on the same page. Thirdly is the board authorization. If staff believes it warrants consideration, staff has to bring the findings of that metric evaluation and either the input or consensus from the regional partners to the board of directors for you to make a decision on whether or not to approve a study. These discussions have to be had in open public meetings, at a standing committee of the board, and then at the board level itself to ensure public input is heard prior to any decision by the board. And then fourth, and this is my final point, the aspect of advancing the study. If the board does approve that a study should proceed, as Ms. McFall noted, the policy lays out all the external approvals and additional gates the study would have to get through, starting with OCTA and making sure the project was in their LRTP. And that would be the only way to advance the study. And each of these steps, in terms of these external approvals, is highlighted where it requires additional public engagement. So really emphasizing that transparency aspect. And that's all I have to share, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Director Beal.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First point I wanted to make is I want to be very clear and dispel any notion or concern that may be held today by OCTA based on their letter or any member of the public or any city. There is no intention embodied in this policy that the TCA is desiring to back away from, leave, limit, or modify the actions that were taken back last March when we approved Alternative 22. It's the exact opposite of that. So please, anyone listening, everyone listening, understand there is no intention that the TCA is trying to change its position by this policy. What this policy represents is a sincere, good faith effort by the members of the working group at TCA and staff to put in writing assurances for the benefit of San Clemente, as well as Senator Bates, that the TCA has no secret plot or plan or desire to put a toll road through the city of San Clemente. That is why it sets forth the history of how we got to where we are today and sets forth the very detailed conditions and parameters that would have to be satisfied should any study in the future ever become necessary. And why could a study in the future become necessary? Everyone should keep in mind that before Alternative 22 was selected, the TCA participated in a many years long study, took expert testimony, conducted analysis, got stakeholder testimony to identify projections through the horizon year. And what was that horizon year? It goes all the way out to the year 2050. And based on all the best analysis and projections available today, Alternative 22 was selected as providing the greatest amount of transportation mobility enhancement with the least amount of public opposition. And so in our lifetimes through 2050, I don't believe anything is intended ever to be necessary to do anything more. And that is why the policy tried to put that in writing so that everybody could see that there is no secret plot. Now, No one has a perfect crystal ball. Nobody knows for certain whether the projections that were set forth in the prior study will turn out to be true. If that does occur, then this agency, just like other agencies, has the right and the responsibility to address regional mobility issues within our mission. So that was the main goal of this project. I want to thank the working group members and the staff for developing a very thoughtful, comprehensive policy. It was intended to counter the notion that road projects are simply dreamt up in private, planned overnight, constructed in secret with no public process, no review of data or input from the public. That just isn't how it's done. We believe our study from last March identified the best solutions based on objective data laid out in our policy. And this policy was intended to give guidance to future boards long after we're all gone, and clear direction to staff on exactly what sorts of data would constitute a major change, an unforeseen situation, and how that data should then be vetted by the County of Orange, by OCTA, by Caltrans, before any request is made to the board at TCA to authorize another study. To me, it was a simple, straightforward policy like this that would reflect good, balanced government and result in a solution that would be supported by the entire region. Our ability to use this keeps transportation planning local. These are local issues. Instead of relinquishing control to the state about what is best for our region here in South Orange County. So that was the goal. I'm proud of the effort, and I want to just make it clear we did everything we could to try and reassure the city of San Clemente that we mean what we say when we tell them, and Senator Bates, there is no secret plot, there is no secret desire. We are not backing away from any of the decisions that have been made before. And we would like us all to reestablish the bonds of trust so that we can move forward together in peace and harmony. And I guess that's all I had to say at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Beal. Supervisor Bartlett, thank you for being accommodating and your patience. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Can you see me okay? I had to move I was running low on battery, so I had to move my iPad around a bit. But am I in view?
Yes.
On the screen, okay, great, thank you. So I want to address both the policy, the proposed policy and the resolution. I know that the staff report indicates that the Foothill Eastern South County Workshop's purpose and goal was to create a local solution to address the state Senate bills and work through the litigation items with San Clemente. But it's impossible to reach an actual solution without including all of the right stakeholders in the room. And that's part of the issue. And that's why I created the county-led stakeholder working group. So with regard to what TCA has done, the county, OCTA, and San Clemente were not even given a copy of the policy to review or comment before it was placed on a special meeting agenda. That policy to me is very troublesome for a whole host of reasons. And I think it's fundamentally flawed. And part of the reason why Senator Bates, when she reviewed the policy, is still moving ahead with her Senate bills, I think it tells a story. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. The staff report and the policy state that TCA would consider improvements to LPPE. However, LPPE is going to be a non-tolled county arterial and not a TCA facility. So TCA doesn't have direct jurisdiction over LPPE. The county's assigned responsibility in this policy without the opportunity to comment or even review the document. Also, OCTA has existing metrics in place that they use to evaluate traffic deficiencies. And there's no need to reinvent the wheel. OCTA is the local transportation planning agency. And so last March, when the board unanimously voted to formally conclude any further study or extension of the 241 toll road. However, when you take a look at certain aspects within the proposed policy, it seems to perpetuate another study in the future that could include a potential extension of LPPE or something in that region. And that concerns me a great deal. I believe the board should consider moving discussion of the policy to the county-led stakeholder working group that I have initiated. And that includes all of the relevant stakeholders, the TCA board chairs, the city of San Clemente, OCTA, Rancho Mission Viejo. The stakeholder working group now has a lot of momentum, and all the parties have been working very collaboratively together to create a local solution in lieu of SB 760 and 761. And in the future, we can also include providing a resolution for the pending litigation, but that would come at the appropriate time during discussions. The path that the stakeholders believe is most likely to result in a local solution is the cooperative agreement. The Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency and the county work groups can come together and work on a two-pronged local solution that would include the policy, a policy with stakeholder input, and the cooperative agreement, which should be sort of the governing document. The collaborative approach will create an actual local solution. We always want to have local control to the greatest extent possible. We don't want to be legislated by Sacramento. We want to create our own solutions on a localized basis. And through the cooperative agreement with all the stakeholders working together, we'll actually be able to create a local solution in lieu of the Senate bills and hopefully put the litigation also behind us at some point. And it will do something that's really important. It will put the South County residents' mind at ease so they know what transportation improvements will be made now and in the future. It's not just a matter of the different stakeholders that are at the table, but we've got 650,000 residents here in South County. And it's really important to understand their concerns, and we've got to be able to put their mind at ease now and in the future with regard to transportation planning. So for those reasons and the statements that I just made in comments, I am not in favor of the proposed policy or the resolution. I don't think it gets us, I don't think either document gets us to where we need to go. I'm always for putting actual solutions together and putting things in place that move us forward. And I think both the resolution and the policy that has been proposed today puts us in a position where we're taking steps backwards, not forward. And so I don't think they're the appropriate documents. It's certainly not at this point. And I appreciate staff taking it off the agenda for a vote today, because I think it does, everything warrants some further discussion and some very frank conversations with all of the stakeholders before we actually move forward. And at this point, I'll conclude my comments and reserve comments for later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe Chair Kelly wished to make a comment.
Okay, thank you, and thank everyone for their comments so far. I want to underline the fact that the working group, which has been meeting in good faith and with the goals that have been stated. And I think the product that staff and the working group came up with is a good policy. However, I am seeing that it has not had the intended effect that were our goals. And I'm actually troubled by the fact we had a public comment that stated that we did not include, quote, the communities that were affected by TCA's mission. And I wanted to make sure that the public knows that Director Ward from San Clemente was indeed invited to be a part of the TCA working group, and she declined the invitation. Supervisor Bartlett was also a member of the working group, and her schedule led to conflicts where she was unable to attend the TCA-led working group meetings. So we want to assure that
Chair Kelly, I attended the last meeting.
that's that's right. The second to the last meeting. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Bartlett. And so as the board can see, we have had two separate working groups working to achieve the same goals. And I just want to make sure that the public knows that this was intended to be a very transparent policy that we have provided, which would really reassure the communities that we are, it's underscoring the commitment that we made in March of 2020 with putting forth Alternative 22. And I am going to be very anxious to hear the comments of the other directors and to receive feedback at this meeting. So that concludes my comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I was informed that Director Taylor had wanted to speak. I apologize, Director Taylor. I don't see very well, but Director Taylor?
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
thank you, Madam Chair.
excuse me, Director
I
Taylor,
would like-
point of order, Madam Chair. This is Director Ward. Can staff please remove the PowerPoint so that we can see each other in the meeting before Mr. Taylor comments?
Director Ward, this is Samuel Johnson. The challenge you would have with that is that the public would have nothing to see. The public sees the PowerPoint, not your individual faces. So the PowerPoint needs to stay up.
But the PowerPoint is on item 1, the first page. It's frozen there, and I don't know why that needs to stay up. What? Because we can't conduct our meeting. I can't see anyone.
I believe, Madam, I will have ask the technical staff to reach out to you, because I believe there's a few clicks you can do on your screen where you can have the speakers in the attendees showing versus the PowerPoint. So Gordon, if you can have someone from the team contact Director Ward and help her with that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Can you just pause for 1 minute before Mr. Taylor speaks? Just to get that phone call in. I'm sorry for the delay, but this really, we can't conduct the meeting like this.
Well, Director Ward, I'm not sure how long that resolution will take if he's trying to walk you through remotely.
Gordon put it in the chat for you, Director Ward.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Khan did. It's in your chat.
It's in my, okay, I see something.
Okay.
You know, I was looking for the side-by-side gallery and that is not coming up as a, okay, when I see side-by-side mode and I put that in and then I get the full copy of the PowerPoint and everything goes away. So all I see is the table of everyone that's there and no one else that is on the call in the Zoom chat. I don't see it.
Well, I think that's, Director Ward, I can only suggest that I have technical staff call you and try and walk you through some of it. I understand you're having some challenges. But even here, just so you know, in our room here, we are able to size the screen so that the PowerPoint and all the talking heads are still showing. So I think it's just a matter of showing you how you can do it on your specific system.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. I put up gallery view that was over in the right-hand corner. So I have it.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right, Director Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As part of the working group, it was always our intention to try to make a process that would allow for trust and transparency, and that was really the only focus that we ever discussed. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have gone over that way. The other question I would have with the county working group was, why is San Juan Capistrano considered an irrelevant member of this area? The SCRTE clearly shows San Juan Capistrano impacted just as much as San Clemente by Route 22. Our east-west corridor is named as a potential project, and I'm just wondering, why were we excluded?
Okay, so Director Taylor, it's Supervisor Bartlett. It wasn't an intentional exclusion. We needed to have a small, nimble working group to start to make sure we've got a meeting of the minds. And I think we do now, but certainly as we move forward, and that's why as we move through the process, especially through the cooperative agreement process, I think it's really important. And I had suggested at one point that we actually create a corridor cities working group that would be a county-led group that would also include not only San Clemente, San Juan Capistrano, Dana Point, but also Lake Forest, Mission Viejo, and Rancho Santa Margarita. Because when you talk about South County mobility for the future, we're looking at the three major projects, LPPE, the Ortega Widening Project, and the PICO extension to the county line. All of those projects, the three projects, as they move forward, they all impact our regional mobility and public safety in South County. And I think as those projects start to gravitate and move forward, we need to have a local working group with all of the affected corridor cities. So relative to the stakeholder working group that has been created, I mean, at the appropriate time, especially as we get to certain other aspects relative to the cooperative agreement, there may be other stakeholders that will be brought in. We wanted to make sure that on the basics, especially with the city of San Clemente and OCTA and Rancho Mission Viejo, that we had kind of a general meeting of the minds to create a template or a working plan that we could conceptually agree to move forward and address the issues for South County and also address the issues relative to legislation and then litigation down the road. So you make some very valid points, and I completely understand where you're coming from. And at the appropriate time, I believe there could be a definite expansion of the county-led effort. Thank you.
And I do want to say that Senator Bates had conveyed to me that she had a copy of the co-op agreement. Yet that also did not delay the legislation. So at this point in time, I think Senator Bates is not apparently, and I don't want to speak for her, but I'm sort of in this world of looking at she is not considering the local solutions by either group. And I do want to address this is that the county work group, considering that the county is not a party to the litigation, then they cannot solve that litigation issue. And also, as Supervisor Bartlett has listed the stakeholders that are attending the county work group, there is a private entity, which is the Rancho Mission Viejo, because they're also not part of the litigation. The litigation cannot be resolved by that work group because a private entity cannot just negotiate with the public agencies on a litigation issue, yet cities impacted, as Director Taylor has just highlighted, were not at the table, and certainly TCA cannot represent those cities' interests. TCA can only represent its interest, but we can't represent those interests. I'm glad that Supervisor Bartlett said mentioned about having a small group and being limbo, which is exactly the reason for my phased approach. Because it had to be that way to really get good discussions. And we have gone through the first phase and moving on to the second phase. of reaching out to our transportation partners, and at the appropriate time, which could be soon, is to have that pivot toward the litigation aspect of it, then to invite at that time the Director James to be part of that conversation. And so I think that is why we have so many pieces. And I've laid this out to members of the work group about the need. I see it sort of as when I do things as an attorney, I lay out a roadmap, and I laid out the roadmap, and not hiding it from the public, and then which is why I have made these reports at External Affairs as well as at 2 board meetings, is the need to be public and transparent and laying out that roadmap. I think that is how you can help people see what is coming up and what you hope to achieve at the end as well. And so we are meeting in those segments. And again, for each, as Director Chair Kelly had mentioned, at each and every one of these meetings of San Clemente and county are always invited. And I understand it's so hard to work with everybody's schedule, and so there will be conflict as we move into this next phase. And hopefully today's discussion will sway San Clemente to really make the time to come, and I would appreciate that. Then we can move on to the next phase. Supervisor Chafee, I apologize. I didn't see your hand raised there, and I went on. I apologize.
I just raised it, so that's okay. We're speaking of transparency. While some members of the working groups have been identified by the conversation, I don't know the complete membership of either of the groups. And it seems like that should be put into the record at some point as to who is on which working group. I don't know that. Then I'd like to say I agree with the Supervisor, Lisa Bartlett's comments about this effort here. I think OCTA is the premier planning agency, and I think a resolution affirming that would do more good than trying to set out a separate policy. I appreciate a lot of work has gone into it, but it sort of sets up a future conflict in a way. And I think we need to recognize that OCTA as that premier agency and kind of get out of the planning thing. I think kind of scares San Clemente, for one, to think that we might do some more planning. And any of this planning is way off in the future when you actually have built the road, and then you start studying it, whether there's traffic congestion, all those things. And so I think if there is a policy, that can come much later than right now. And so I would just as soon not move forward with this policy. So thank you.
Thank you. And Director, Supervisor Chafee, the members of the TCA work group included invitations were all sent. So it was the County of Orange, San Clemente, Mission Viejo, Rancho Santa Margarita, San Juan Capistrano, and I think, was that it? And staff? Okay. And myself, I guess, would be in there. And I know there were other cities that wanted to be there, but of course, you want to be mindful of having any type of Brown Act, violations. And so, that was, if you add one here, you drop one there, type of thing. And so it was not by any means to exclude it, rather to make sure that we are within legal limits. And, definitely that's another reason why you need to have a board meeting like you really run into that problem. And I see Director Miller.
If I may, I'm not concerned about the Brown Act. I simply wanted to know who was serving, not necessarily by region or who they represent, but that's a fair thing for the public to know.
Supervisor Chafee, we were having trouble hearing you. If you were still commenting, can you restate what you were saying?
Well, I wanted to know by name who actually served with these committees. I think that's a transparency thing. I don't concern myself that there's been a Brown Act violation. I know you're very careful not to let that happen. I think transparency, we should know who actually served and actually may be commended for giving that service. And so just listing maybe an addendum to the minutes, who served on which of the two committees have been referenced. I think that is a transparency thing. That's all I'm trying to get at. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion, and it's a great suggestion. We will do so. Thank you. Director Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I've sat back and because of my role as vice chair, I've had a little insight to this, but not much. And I want to thank the subcommittee and Director Bartlett for recommending, I'm sorry, the ad hoc and Director Bartlett for recommending it. It's a good idea. You know, what we're trying to accomplish here makes sense. Obviously, how it was executed didn't deliver the response we were hoping for. And it hasn't killed that trust issue. We built that trust a year ago with the conclusion of SCTRE and we made it very clear that TCA was no longer going to be advancing a different connection to the 5. Los Patrones Parkway was going to complete that effort. And unfortunately, we started talking more about advancing the 241 again, and it made everybody very uncomfortable, including Assemblyman Breaux while he was still seated, and Senator Bates, and she's still very uncomfortable about it. So when you read this policy, I think a policy on how we're going to initiate projects is a good policy to have, but it shouldn't be specific to any area. It should be corridor-wide and go across both agencies. And we haven't done that with this. I understand the people being uncomfortable with it. When I read it, it felt to me like we were right back where we started from, with allowing one director to initiate the process for issues that probably are not TCA issues. They're other agencies, namely OCTA issues, because you talk about the east-west impact on arterials caused by our toll road. And that, I don't mind the director doing that, coming to TCA, say, I think we have an issue there, but the very next call, in my opinion, should be to OCTA and say, this is your issue. We would like to work with you to discuss this. And it goes back to what I've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 years, is that these agencies need to work more closely. We have very specific roles. Each agency has its own role. And instead of trying to step out of our lane, and when you read our policy right now, it feels like we're stepping out of our lane, that we're taking this through a pretty robust process before we ever ask OCTA or Caltrans or the county if they agree with us. And Director Bartlett hit it right on the head. LPPE is not a TCA project any longer. It's a county project and it's their lead. And for us to start studying solutions on that roadway is not our role any longer. It's not our road. It's a county road. And the same goes for Ortega Highway and I-5 and all these other freeways and arterials that aren't our responsibility. We have impact on them and they have impact on our roads, and we should be part of the process to study these things. But we need to work directly with the agency that has primary responsibility. In most cases, that's going to be OCTA. And if we put together a policy on how we do that, each project that is now a widening project, for example, TCA does have responsibility, but anything that touches something outside of our system, we need to have a very clear set of engagement rules on how we're going to go about it. I like the effort on this. I know that ad hoc committee worked extremely hard. I know that there's some discussion about why San Clemente wasn't there. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm sure Director Ward will address it. And I think I just heard Chair Wong state that I think they fixed the problem. So, and hopefully San Clemente will be back at the table at that point, and hopefully Director Bartlett will be able to find time in her schedule. I know she's incredibly busy as well to make those meetings. So I think we're we're thinking about the right things. I just don't think we executed it very well on this attempt. And I think it's because we didn't include the other stakeholders that I think if they would have been in those meetings, in particular, OCTA should have been there to discuss what the real concerns were and how we go about initiating a project in the right manner to make sure the right stakeholder is leading the project. So I want to commend the work that was done here. Staff, I know you worked very hard. Valerie and I had a long conversation about this morning. And, you know, I think we're on the right track. We just need to engage the right people to make sure that we don't hit any shortcuts or get off track, for lack of a better word. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Miller, for that comment and those comments, and I really appreciate it. And I think this is why we had to, you know, as someone who worked on it, you tend to say, hey, you know, you think you conveyed it, and definitely feedback is, okay, maybe it wasn't clear. And that's why this meeting is so important to me, because I wanted to make sure that new eyes, fresh eyes looking at it, does convey the messages that we, the work group, wanted to convey. And I think what you stated about Los Patrones as well as OCTA is very important, which is why I stated at the beginning and several times when the work group was meeting about that first phase is to talk to all the cities within TCA, and then to go to the next phase, which is to include our, you know, transportation partners in here in this region, which would have been Caltrans as well as OCTA, because that's important. And I think I would appreciate it if you could probably give me some suggestions about how really we can convey it strongly and clearly about, you know, the OCTA and the county's role in that LPPE, because I thought, and I'm going, you know, to point specifically, I thought the paragraph on page 2 of the policy, or maybe if I'm not, well, I'm going by memory. Maybe I should always go by my own memory. Yeah, it is. It is page 2. And part of page 1 and 2 in that evaluation makes that strongly, and maybe it's not strong enough, is that suggestion of going to OCTA and the county of Orange before anything, because it's their road. Exactly what you said. It's their road. Go deal with that first. You know, and I'll make this point, is that I have heard feedback from many cities that said, hey, we don't have a seat at OCTA. So we don't get to raise our hand and say anything. There's nobody we can complain to when things aren't going right, because we don't have a seat at the table. And almost, it's probably not right, but it's at TCA that have a seat. And so they voice those concerns. But just because they voice it here does not mean, wow, that means TCA, now you're going to take over. No. And to the contrary, what this policy is trying to say is, member of the city, we know you don't have the representation at OCTA, that's fine. Okay, we hear you, but we're going to throw it back at OCTA or Caltrans or the county, whoever. Let them deal with it first before we'll even talk about it here. And if that's not being conveyed correctly, it's not worded correctly. I think at some point, I guess it's more like wordsmithing here is, I would really appreciate your, any suggestion, Director Miller or anybody who said, hey, I want this even more clear than what you have stated, because if it's not coming through, then we got to get it right.
Thanks, Chair Wong. And just to clarify, for cities that say they don't have a seat at OCTA, every district gets 3 seats. You have a supervisor, an at-large seat, or a one city, one vote seat, and a population weighted seat. It's designed that way for a reason. There's always going to be 3 seats. Reach out to whoever your directors are and voice those concerns. Most of the time, OCTA is listening to all these meetings. I know they're listening right now. They know when a director from TCA is voicing a concern. And so it's not going unheard. It just may not get the response that they want because they haven't reached out to the director to push that response. So I appreciate that. In terms of the wordsmithing and things, again, I think this is just far too targeted. We need a policy for the entire agency on every project, not just for South County and Los Patrones. And I think it was a mistake. First of all, I'll give you my first piece of advice. It was a mistake to keep referencing the 241 extension, because that is where the trust was lost with San Clemente, in my opinion. It still looked like we were trying to advance it. We were going to study it because we continue to talk about it. After last year, when we completed SCTRE, we said we are done. Alternative 22 completes our connection to the 5. And then we immediately, so if you want some constructive criticism, that shouldn't be in there anymore. I mean, and that's, I think, is what scares everybody in San Clemente and obviously Senator Bates. So we have passed to say, hey, how do you get out there? How do you get to OCTA? On this board alone, you have 5 OCTA members sit on TCA. And if you're not getting your concern over to OCTA, then you're not reaching out to us. We may not be aware of it. And so, and I know every one of these board members that cross over will take input from any director out of any district up to OCTA to help solve those problems. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Well, and I like exactly what you're saying about having as well as the other policy. I think if we can get to right, you know, then you can really move on as well. And I stress this is you know, definitely a good policy for TCA. And moving forward, as I stated in our April meeting, learning from mistakes in the past, I alluded to the 24191 issues there, and because of what happened over there, it really influenced how I view this policy should be worded. So I think that your statement is and suggestion is very appropriate and definitely on target. Director Ward, thank you so much for waiting patiently.
Okay, I appreciate the comments that I've heard from some of the directors of the concerns that we have. I would say that this policy greatly increased those concerns, and I think rightly so from what was said. It's interesting that this whole PowerPoint had to be shown and a lot of comments made to try to clarify what was said in that document. And I think that shows the document is woefully deficient. Just the fact that TCA alone was talking about this and it treads on redundancies in OCTA just indicates to me that this policy really should be brought, as Supervisor Bartlett mentioned, it should be brought to the county working group where all the stakeholders are there, and we're all quite willing to work on all of this. It's been a very frank discussion. It should be brought to that discussion as part of TCA's input of possibilities, because I think just this working group working on it, I don't believe anyone in that working group is on the OCTA board also. And the metrics that have been chosen, I can tell you for San Clemente are quite concerning. That this 10% increase in traffic with no baseline, and then trying to use your baseline of March 2021, or no, March 2020, when the TCA board voted on this. Point of order, there's someone that doesn't have their button on mute, and it's been through all the speakers, and it's really hard to hear, even myself talk. So please put on yourself on mute. It's very concerning to us that the metrics being used are anything to do with the South County traffic relief effort and any of what was come out of that, because there's a lot of questions to that study, and that was even brought out by CEO Daryl Johnson of OCTA, that study had some flaws or concerns, and it shouldn't be used for anything, for any baseline in the future. I think any baseline of Los Patrones should be build out of that area and then wait 5 years and maybe consider that a baseline. But I'm not saying that is a trigger, but it might be a more valid baseline than just looking at March 2020 when there's 0% build in Area 5. And so of course, 10% of 0 is going to show a trigger. So I think this is just deeply flawed, and that's the reason why it really should be in the with the other working groups so we can all talk about it. I want it clarified why I was not in the meeting. I want every director to know that I was willing to go to that meeting, and I did not decline. I never used the word decline. Mayor Pro Tem Jean James and I are in a subcommittee of our city council. It is council's direction that we both attend and go to any meetings, and we make decisions and we bring that to our council. I can't break council direction on that. And when I said that I would attend these meetings, I said that Councilmember James, it was required that he come because that is how my city set up representation. It was then that it was declined for him to attend. So if he couldn't attend and hear what I was hearing, I couldn't attend the meeting either. And it was just simply that. And please do not think that I declined going to this, because if any of you know me well, you would know that I would want to be in the room on discussions. This working group was formed to help build trust, and the goals were to resolve the issues of SB 760 and 761 and end our litigation, which San Clemente is quite willing to do. And I think we've been very forthcoming in that for quite a few years now. We have been proposing settlement. This policy did not achieve any of that. In fact, it made it much worse. Mentioning extending the 241 again has opened it all back up, and I have been inundated by my residents, and I'm quite surprised they didn't get in letters to you today, but I'm certainly getting the letters. And contrary to what Director Beal said, this does nothing to reaffirm the March 2020 board action, and it just seems to indicate that at least the board that met in this working group has every intention of trying to advance a 241 extension when all studies showed that that was not necessary, and an arterial solution was proposed. So we align ourselves with the comments made by OCTA Daryl Johnson in his letter, and it states the proposed policy and resolution were contrary to the attempts to resolve the concerns that led to the introduction of 760 and SB 761. This action taken today is in opposition to those, and it actually demonstrates the TCA cannot be trusted to live up to the vote of March 2020, where we voted unanimously to formally conclude the agency's effort for a southerly extension. It also, it just undermines the intent of why we all went into this study. And I was told by the CEO then, Mike Cramen, that TCA wanted to start the study because they wanted to see if a toll road was necessary and if the residents even wanted it. Because why would the TCA keep trying to bang their head up against a wall, trying to do something that no one wants? And apparently that sentiment is gone. It was said early in 2015 before embarking on this, and it has been forgotten today in 2021. But this proposed policy and resolution gives the clear appearance the TCA is more interested in preserving its own interests rather than address the transportation needs of Orange County. Using Fullerton instead of as your metric for studying something instead of the OCTA approved OCTAM modeling system is just not right. It just further does not build trust. You've got to work within how this county and the Transportation Commission, the agency that is in charge of the LRTP, how they model roadways, and fighting about how that's modeled is just not going to get anyone anywhere. It's just going to keep continuing this. Having a board member just come up to you and ask for a roadway because they have concerns, boy, that is not a traffic metric whatsoever. That just further is what TCA has been doing, I think, all along in looking at roadways. I think that's a terrible metric, and San Clemente would not be for that whatsoever. So again, I'm glad you're foregoing any further consideration of the policy today, but I think it should be voted, and I would make the motion, or Supervisor Bartlett could, but I think this should be moved to the other working group where all the stakeholders are there. San Clemente would be comfortable with that. And certainly if San Clemente is willing to allow my subcommittee, which includes my mayor pro tem, to attend any meeting of a working group for TCA, we would gladly attend that. But I think this policy should be moved to that working group where OCTA is in the room, and we can get clear metrics of what's appropriate. San Clemente just has so many concerns about this, and the PowerPoint to try to solve that and get more input into it. I think just the whole premise of this really needs to be redone and talked about by all stakeholders so that it reflects good transportation policy and an agreement of what the county, South County, is doing. And that includes, it does include Rancho Mission Viejo. They are building 14,000 homes, and they are a stakeholder in Los Patrones Parkway. So they should be at the table. And there is currently a cooperative agreement between the county, Rancho Mission Viejo, and San Clemente. And one of the important intersections of Los Patrones Parkway is in the city of San Clemente. It is at La Plata and Los Patrones Parkway, and San Clemente should be at that table deciding that. And we need to feel comfortable with it. And having TCA say, we're going to study Los Patrones Parkway just on the whim of any board member, not good transportation metric at all. And saying you're not going to use OCTAM and you're going to use Cal State Fullerton, that's not a good transportation policy either. So again, I think it just shows that this needs to be more in a room with all of the stakeholders and not just TCA, a few board members. So those are my comments for now. Anyway, this didn't accomplish anything that I know you were trying to, and you know, we really need to try a little harder here.
And I appreciate your comments, Director Ward, and I'm, as I stated, I think as we pivot toward litigation, and I'm so glad to hear that, and you are willing to join, and as I stated, that would be certainly the time for, you know, Director James to be a member, because we will be addressing that specifically. And so I'm actually very delighted if you can actually see me smile broadly. And I'm telling you that. So we will definitely be inviting both of you to that. Again, inviting you and now Director James to that conversation because it's needed. And I do want to say that as a point of order, because it's not on our agenda, we can't move forward on that motion. And furthermore, I would say that, you know, a policy forcing or a policy guiding this agency and asking others to input on the guiding policy of this agency is a little bit troubling to me. It's like, saying, you know, city of Yorba Linda has a personnel issue and we have a personnel policy, and then we asked, and then the city, I'm going to pick on City of Irvine today, and City of Irvine says, well, you know, Yorba Linda, you should not have a personnel policy because City of Irvine, being your gracious neighbor to the south or southeast west, that we didn't get to participate in your personnel policy, and then so that's a little bit unsettling in that sense, as well as the fact that we are tasked by this board on addressing legislation and litigation to discuss litigation with parties that are not part of the lawsuit. I think would be violating everything that's possible within the legal jurisdiction of the world. So I appreciate your remarks, but I think we have a little bit of trouble meaning that matrix as well. Lastly, and then one more thing, I do want to clarify for those who don't know what Director Ward was referring to in terms of the Fullerton, Cal State Fullerton study. That's a demographic study that's used by all transportation agencies. It's used by SCAG. In fact, SCAG referred to it recently. OCTA relies on it. So it's actually a demographic study that everybody used, and it's really the leading authority for our region. So I do want to say that, in fact, it would be problematic, extremely problematic, for this agency not to follow the Fullerton demographics, because we're really in trouble because SCAG, LA, and to some extent as well, and definitely OCTA, we all use this. And so you know, if we want to do good regional planning, whether it's housing or transportation, Fullerton's demographic study is the one that's quoted. Your RENA number also relies on that at the state, you know, everything. So I want to make that very clear when we're talking about Fullerton, because it is heavily dependent on for both transportation and housing in anything dealing with the SCAG region. Director Beal has now joined us by phone, and he asked to speak. Director Beal.
Thank you very much. I would echo everything that you just said, Director Wong. And I just want to make mention, in Director Ward's comments, there was a suggestion that these policy issues should be moved over to the county-led working group because all the stakeholders are represented there, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to point out that I would take issue with the notion that all stakeholders are there. I know the city of Rancho Santa Margarita has not been invited to participate in that. I don't believe the city of San Juan Capistrano has. This toll road is running directly through the heart of our cities, and we have significant interest in these issues. And so that is a concern that I have with respect to the county-led working group. I do not believe all the interested necessary stakeholders are currently involved.
Yes, Director Beal, are you done with your comments? I guess so. Okay, Samuel?
Well, no, Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank the board for the discussion. I think it did accomplish your intent. We got a lot of feedback. Staff definitely sees some opportunities where we can facilitate the working group's discussions and make sure we address a draft policy that includes everyone's concerns. I, of course, have had several conversations with CEO Daryl Johnson at OCTA because it was our intent, and the working group made it pretty clear that we want to stay in our lane and we want to work as a good partner. And I think the discussion here shows that that can be accomplished. I think there's definitely an educational aspect, as you were noting, with the Cal State Fullerton aspect and that demographic data. It's probably important for the board to know that that's one of the starting blocks that goes into OCTA's Octane model. So anytime you're looking at transportation, you kind of start with that housing, population, jobs. Those play into your transportation needs. So the policy was pointing there, but we can look to have some refinement Staff can take that effort. If you, Madam Chair, and the board is comfortable with it, I'd like to engage OCTA and Caltrans in some more discussions, and then bring that to your expanded working group and have those discussions and figure out if we can put forward a good TCA policy that the boards can consider at a future meeting.
Yes, and definitely that is part of the second phase, and definitely, you know, when we enter into as well for litigation, not forget the third party,
Yes.
fourth party, 3, 4, I don't know, lost count, both Caltrans and the environmentalists will have to be there as they are the parties to a litigation. I know it's really hard to see the delineation, and I apologize. My left brain is probably not very creative in expressing that, but to me, it's very important that, you know, when we're talking about litigation, it really, that is truly the difference between the two groups. I commend Supervisor Bartlett on what she wants to accomplish in terms of what she wants to do in addressing Rancho Mission Viejo's concerns, and et cetera. But at the same time, because this board's direction included litigation, then it must be a conversation among the litigants, and neither ranch, OCTA, or county are parties to the litigation. So it's very important that we stick to the litigation as well. And so I want to make that very clear if I wasn't clear before. So with that, I don't see any more hands raised. I want to verify with.
Madam Chair, this is Director Ward. My chat is not working. I've gotten to an, I can't get it to come up again.
No problem.
A message to David Spears, and I can't get out of it. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to clarify. In the county working mobility group, we're not discussing litigation. We're discussing the exact things that this is proposing to try to do, but we're discussing actually reaching resolutions on roles and responsibilities and what projects are being advanced, and we're reaching those agreements. In doing that, that would settle San Clemente's litigation. And I would think that TCA would want that very much. So it's not that we're discussing litigation, we're discussing all the solutions that could lead to solutions that would moot that litigation, which we're willing to do, and it would moot the need for SB 760 and 761. So I can't say, I have not heard anything directly from Senator Bates about that she's not happy with the county working group. I think she is, from what I've heard so far, and we're close to coming up with something in there, and we have another meeting scheduled. So that's being watched very closely, but you know, we're all working on that, and so I think it's just being, you know, saying that we can't talk about it and we can't have Rancho Mission Viejo in there or OCTA because they're not in the litigation. That's just not speaking to what the issue is, and that's resolving the issues that we all have in South County and making San Clemente feel better about it after the 6 years of what we've gone through with the SCTRE project. So that, I just wanted to clarify that, and that's why we can meet. And this group asked Mr. Johnson, and I believe you, for the policy that you were working on, and San Clemente independently asked for that policy. We got it less than 72 hours before this meeting. I didn't get it till yesterday. So, you know, it's been very difficult to look at this, and knowing that and seeing that the board was going to vote on this today. So I'm not sure you would have pulled it if you hadn't seen any issues from OCTA in the county. So I thank them for writing that and sticking up for the arterials and the MPAW, but I'm not sure this board would have stopped. And that's a problem, because it probably would have passed today, a policy like this that is just wrong. And I'm sorry, but trying to insert the 241 into this again is a huge mistake. And I think you would have voted for it. So that makes San Clemente very, very uncomfortable. And you did this as you are aware that San Clemente has indicated that we want to withdraw as a member of this agency. And I think I would have thought that you would have been more careful and thoughtful in what you did on this policy. So, I'm pretty disappointed in that. And San Clemente's tried very hard to work with everyone. When we were going through this process, Director Taylor, the city of San Clemente, and me as the mayor stuck up for the city of San Juan Capistrano. And anytime we opposed an alignment, we included in our opposition the alignments through San Juan Capistrano, because if there was no traffic on the road, it shouldn't go through your city either. And I greatly respect your Ridgeline ordinance and your open space. So as I do all the cities, and I can tell you that if this effort from this agency was ever pointed through one of your cities and your open space, I would have been asking for the studies and the metrics the very first year, and I wouldn't have allowed it to go on for 6 years. I know I would have done that, and I think I would have done that. But this board has sat for 5 or 6 years and just let this go on, and it didn't come to a good conclusion. Not for TCA, anyway. There was no alignment there, and I think TCA knew it many years in advance and didn't do anything. So please, the board needs to take control here and start doing the right thing, and start doing the right thing for South Orange County traffic. That's what we're all interested in. But when you hear things, and when TCA hears things that board members say, hey, we're not represented at OCTA, you need to speak up and say that there are representatives for each and every district. In fact, Brian Goodell of Mission Viejo is our representative for District 5. And TCA should be saying things like that, and it shouldn't be a vacuum. It really shouldn't. It needs to, if you're going to be a transportation partner, it should be where you're all talking the same language. And unfortunately, when we walk in the door at TCA, I feel like everything is off, and we're in an alternate universe. And seeing this policy pop up today is just confirming that. It really is disappointing. So, I hope everybody understands that we are totally willing to work with everyone, but I'm just not seeing it in this document.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you can make notation that Director Murphy is here. He's letting us know. And Mr. Johnson?
No, so again, Madam Chair, I think we have pretty good direction from the board. It's clear that the working group's intent is not showing through necessarily in the verbiage that was used in the policy. But from what I'm hearing from the board, we're all focused on moving in the same direction. I would counter, however, the statement about where we are with the co-op. TCA, your CEO on behalf of the agency is participating in those discussions, and I can't say the co-op is anywhere near close. So I have a lot of concerns with that co-op, the structure and the intent. So I don't want the board to be misled that that is as close as some people may feel. That's just my personal perspective. Again, as you noted at the very onset, Madam Chair, the timing has been a challenge. So in working to address the board's goal and trying to get ahead of the legislation and working with Senator Bates, there wasn't as much time as folks would like. I will say that the working group did review the document several times in developing it, and it didn't come together until really Monday morning. So there was a lot of work. I understand Director Ward's comment that she would have loved to have seen it sooner. And I think now with the extended timeline, we can make sure all those boxes are checked. And I'm glad to hear, as you noted, that Director Ward in the city of San Clemente, now you inviting Director James, will participate so they can be an active participant. And the last comment I will share is that in terms of policies, the board has lots of policies, and you are always looking to enhance and strengthen those policies, similar to what you do with your debt management policy. Those things evolve and they get better and better. So I think an aspect of a concern that the first pass of this policy is a fatal flaw and that it could not be enhanced, I don't necessarily agree with that characterization.
Yes, and I do want to stress the timeline, compression of timeline. We didn't have the luxury, and so I want to thank my work group members as well, all those who came at, giving up weekends, evening. In fact, I would say I had to give up my vacation. Something that I had planned several months ago, had to give up that week as well. So it's so I want to say, a lot of work and sacrifices were made by members of the work group to meet that, getting ahead of the legislation. But legislation will move on, and that's, from my perspective, is a good thing because it allows us to continue to make good policy as guideposts for this agency. And I think we have said it many times, staying in our lane more than anything. And obviously, it appears from some of the comments, it's not clear enough. So we'll go back and make that even more clear, so that it's a good policy for TCA. To me personally, and I speak only for myself, the importance of ensuring that TCA staff and future unknown employees of TCA knows and understand this policy and the lanes that we have to adhere to. So thank you for your comments. I don't see any more hands raised, so thank you for your time, and this meeting is adjourned. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Legal counsel is stopping me.
We have to do Chief Executive Officer's report, Director's reports, and new business.
And of course, Peggy should look down at her agenda. All right, thank you. There you go. And that's what happens when I go by top of my head.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Madam Clerk, we don't have any other public comments.
And we don't have any public comments? Okay, great. And CEO report?
Madam Chair, I have nothing else to share.
Council?
Nothing for me.
Nothing? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day.